In MLB The Show 25, we've seen some really sick new legends added to the game this year. Carlos Beltran, Manny Ramirez, Roger Clemens, Ted Williams, and I can go on and on. But every year we do lose legends. It depends on certain things. You know, maybe they lose their rights or something that was out of SDS's control, like a specific legend in this video. They don't get to keep every legend that they own. And we actually lost a lot of legends this year, and there are a couple of them that are pretty notable. I do this video every year, but let's get into the legends that are removed from MLB The Show 25. Really quickly, before we get into it, I am doing an MLB The Show 25 giveaway on my Twitter. It'll be announced on the full release date, Tuesday, so go check that out. So the first legend, and probably the greatest player of all time in this legend pool that is not going to be returning, is Ernie Banks. You know, he's one of the greatest shortstops ever. And while it does suck to lose such a great player historically, it doesn't hurt like a ton because there are so many other shortstop options. But Ernie Banks is typically at the top of the list at the end game of MLB The Show. So this is probably, I would say, the second worst legend that we lost. But you'll see the rest in this video. But Ernie Banks, definitely a tough one. Now Ryan Ludwick was, I think he was new in 23. I'm not too sure, but overall, not an awful legend to lose. I mean, I never really used his cards, didn't really know much about him when he was added to the game. You know, overall, this 99 is not necessarily like an end game 99. Don't really have too many hard feelings about Ryan Ludwick. Now, Minnie Minoso, I don't think I've ever used on my God Squad, really, but this one is a little different because he's been in the game for so long. I think he entered the game at MLB The Show 19. I remember his 99 in the XP Reward Path in 19. And that card was actually pretty good, but ever since then, I've never used a Minnie Minoso card. So I'm not really going to be too mad that he's gone. Obviously, I don't want any legends to leave, but not really losing sleep over Minnie Minoso. Next up, we have another legend that was only in the game for 1 or 2 years, Rich Aurilia. Is that how you say his name? Again, you know, obviously, like, this card is pretty good, but a lot of these legends are, you know, less common in teams and less common in, you know, baseball fandom in a sense. So, you know, not awful, but, you know, he was a pretty good shortstop this past year. John Kruk, I'm pretty sure he was a new legend last year. I'm not entirely sure if he was in 23, but I think he was a new legend last year. So it kind of sucks to see people only be in the game for 1 year. It's just kind of disappointing, but overall, again, like another legend that's kind of at the bottom of the pool. Now, you're probably looking at this Brett Saberhagen, and this is the only Brett Saberhagen we got in MLB 24. Obviously, he was not a shortstop. This is just an out-of-position card. He's a starting pitcher, and I gotta say, Brett Saberhagen cards have never been good in MLB The Show. It's just the truth. But he has been in the game for forever. I remember this card in the career arc from MLB 18, those of you who played 18 all the way back in the day. But before 18, I don't know, he might have been in 17 or 16, but, you know, it's just kind of like whatever. You know, he has been in the game for forever, though. Now, Troy Percival is kind of a tough legend to lose because he's a reliever, and there aren't that many relievers, especially legend relievers. You know, he was never a dominant reliever in this game. You know, he has like the Joe Random pitch mix, as I call it, the four-seam curveball changeup slider. But, you know, overall, it always hurts to lose legends that are in such scarce positions like relievers. And that's what happens with Troy Percival. Vinny Castilla is an interesting one because I didn't know who this guy was until he was added to MLB The Show. Okay, I might be casual. I mean, I'm only 21 years old, so I didn't really watch this guy play when I was friggin' like 5 years old, or I don't even know if he was still in the league when I was alive. But regardless, Vinny Castilla honestly had an underrated career, and he honestly has an underrated swing in MLB The Show, but I guess we're not going to be able to use it in 25. Now, Tim Salmon is kind of another one of these guys where I don't see him too much in endgame lineups, but I actually really like his swing, or liked his swing now that he's gone. So a little, you know, a little disappointing for me because I really liked using his cards in offline modes and in BR and in events whenever I, you know, needed to build a team. So I actually am going to miss Tim Salmon. Now this one is a tough one. Mike Schmidt is not going to be in MLB The Show 25, and Mike Schmidt is the greatest third baseman of all time, in my opinion. He's a legendary player, and he was a really good card. I didn't use him every year, but he was definitely on my endgame teams multiple times. And, you know, for that alone, it's going to be pretty tough to not have Mike Schmidt. You know, he always brought the power and the fielding at third base, which is something that is very valuable at that position. And, you know, there are going to be a lot of options at third base. There always are. It's not a scarce position, but, you know, one of the best in the game, leaving, it sucks. It really does. AJ Burnett was in the game in 21. I think that's when he was introduced. Don't quote me on any of these. But regardless, another guy who not really in endgame teams, so not the worst loss, but he was a pretty good pitcher. You know, he had a solid pitch mix, had the sinker, had all the other pitches, had the velo. Was never really an elite pitcher, but wasn't a bad pitcher in this game. Another reliever that we are not going to be seeing in MLB The Show 25 is Brian Wilson. It's kind of the same thing as Troy Percival. Was never like an insane reliever in the game, but losing relievers, like, it sucks because they're so scarce in MLB The Show. Basically the same thing here for Brian Wilson. I think Greg Vaughn was a new legend last year, or at least in 23, but I personally never used him. I never really used. I used this 93 in the beginning of the year because he was Team Affinity, but regardless, I never used Greg Vaughn. I was never a fan of his swing, so I don't really care. Now I know for sure that, not for sure, I'm pretty positive that Kevin Youkilis was a new legend last year, so another 1 year, one and done legend, which those kind of suck because you only get them for 1 year, but I truly never used Kevin Youkilis. It's kind of the same. He only had 2 cards. I used this card in the beginning of the year for like the first 2 weeks, but besides that, I think people were only really excited for him to be in the game because of his batting stance, and I don't even care because when I play, I'm so zoomed in on the strike zone, I can't even see it. So I'm, you know, see ya, Kevin Youkilis. We never got a 99 Paul Konerko in MLB The Show 24. His highest overall card is an out-of-position catcher card for the Dodgers, but I'm just going to stay on his first base card. Paul Konerko, I actually am going to miss him. I never used him like in ranked, but I really liked his swing. He was kind of like Tim Salmon, where I would use him in offline modes and in BR and in events. So, you know, I guess I'll miss him in that aspect, but a lot of these legends are kind of just like, you know, sucks to see go. Of course, you don't want anyone to leave, but if you had to pick them, these are the guys I'd pick. Now, Fergie Jenkins is a Hall of Fame pitcher, and he's been in the game for forever. I think he's also been in the game since like MLB 17 or 18, maybe 16. But it doesn't hurt as bad because he's never really been an endgame starter. Like, I don't know what it is. He's one of the greatest pitchers ever, really. I mean, he's not like in the top 5 or probably not in the top 10 of all time, but he is one of the greatest pitchers ever. He is a Hall of Famer for a reason. But I don't know, his cards were just never that good. The fork ball, like this, he never had the velo, didn't have a great pitch mix. So, you know, he's a legendary player, but card wise, whatever. This is an interesting one because John Smoltz was added to the game in MLB The Show 21, and they added them all together, the big 3 from the Braves: John Smoltz, Tom Glavine, and Greg Maddux. And I'm pretty sure Tom Glavine and Greg Maddux are still in the game, but Smoltz is no longer. Obviously, they're not going to just make them a package deal leaving, but John Smoltz is kind of the same as Fergie Jenkins, in all honesty. Never really that good in ranked, but a great pitcher in the grand scheme of baseball history. Dante Bichette is actually a guy I'm going to miss. I never used him in my ranked teams because his defense was so bad. But his swing is butter, and he was such a good hitter. But, you know, I think we can afford to lose him strictly because of his defense, and especially with how critical defense is in this year's game. Now, even though Ron Guidry is a Yankees legend, he was never good in this game. He's been in the game for forever, so he's another long-term legend that we're losing. But he was never good in this game. Oh, look, Mariano Rivera is the greatest closer ever, and this is, in my opinion, card-wise alone, MLB The Show card alone is by far the worst legend that we're going to lose this year. I think it's pretty obvious why he's not in the game this year. I'm not going to talk about the recent allegations against Mariano Rivera. It's just not the place for it. If you want to figure it out. Just Google Mariano Rivera accusations, and that's probably why he's not in the game. So sucks that, you know, some honestly just disturbing allegations against him, you know, caused him to not be in this game. I'm not saying they shouldn't have removed him because of it. They definitely should have. But, you know, it's just a shame of his situation. Tom Henke, I vividly remember him being the new legend in MLB The Show 20. So he's been in the game for 5 years. He's no longer in the game. Another reliever gone. It's basically the same thing as Wilson and Percival. Never elite relievers, but just losing a pool of relievers is kind of tough. And the last legend that was removed was Ken Griffey Sr. This one is kind of, you know, I don't think I've ever used a Ken Griffey Sr. card in ranked or even offline. I've just never used his cards, so that alone I'm kind of just like whatever. But it's just kind of sucks, you know, having Ken Griffey Jr. and not having Ken Griffey Sr. together. Like this captain boost, like it's not gonna happen anymore. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. If you guys are new here, follow me on all my social medias: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and most importantly, make sure you subscribe on here on YouTube. So yeah, see you guys in the next one. Peace.